The day Earth received its first intergalactic challenge wasn't particularly special. No dramatic thunderstorms, no earth-shattering quakes, not even a decent meteor shower to mark the occasion. Just another Tuesday afternoon when the Galactic Empire's massive warship materialized in Earth's orbit, broadcasting their message across every communication channel, with all the subtlety of a disco ball at a funeral. "People of Earth," the transmission began, because apparently originality wasn't the Galactic strong suit. "We are the mighty Galactic Empire, conquerors of 13 star systems, masters of combat, and your soon-to-be overlords unless you prove yourselves worthy." In the United Nations Emergency Assembly, Earth's leaders gathered to watch the transmission, their expressions ranging from mild concern to outright boredom. They'd seen enough sci-fi movies to know where this was going. High Commander Zyx'tari of the Galactic Empire appeared on screen, his purple-scaled face adorned with what humans would later learn were victory scars, though they looked suspiciously like shaving accidents. His massive frame, covered in ceremonial armor that seemed designed by someone who'd watched too many space wrestling matches, filled the view screen. "Our empire has conquered the finest warriors across 3 galactic arms," Zyx'tari continued, his mandibles clicking in what was probably supposed to be an intimidating manner. "The Centaurians fell before us in glorious combat. The Proxima Coalition surrendered after witnessing our might. Even the legendary Arcturus Dominion now pays tribute to our superior fighting prowess." Someone in the back of the UN Assembly muttered, "Compensating for something." A few diplomatic coughs barely disguised the scattered laughter. Earth's diplomatic corps, ever the optimists, tried their best. They sent carefully worded messages about peaceful coexistence, cultural exchange programs, and the possibility of sharing their collection of cat videos, humanity's secret weapon in most first-contact scenarios. The Galactians responded by transmitting recordings of their previous conquests, complete with dramatic background music and what appeared to be post-production special effects. It was like watching a high school sports highlight reel if the high school happened to be run by 7-foot-tall purple lizards with a concerning obsession with combat. "Your attempts at diplomacy amuse us," Zyx'tari declared, apparently mistaking Earth's pragmatism for weakness. "We have studied your species. You are soft, divided, and spend more time arguing about pizza toppings than preparing for glorious combat." The UN Secretary-General pinched the bridge of his nose. "They've been watching our social media, haven't they?" "We offer you one chance," Zyx'tari continued, his voice rising to what he probably thought was a dramatic crescendo. "Face our champions in combat. Should you prove victorious, we shall acknowledge your species as equals. Should you fail—" He paused for effect, though someone had clearly forgotten to add the dramatic thunder in post-production. "Your planet will become the 14th jewel in the Galactic crown." The transmission ended with what looked suspiciously like a TikTok transition effect. In the silence that followed, General Chen of the Global Defense Force stood up, straightened his uniform, and spoke what everyone was thinking. "Well, folks, looks like someone needs a lesson in human history. Anyone want to explain to our purple friends why challenging humanity to a fight might be the biggest mistake since unsliced bread?" The assembly broke into knowing grins. The Galactians had just made the classic mistake of every would-be Earth conqueror. They'd given humanity a reason to prove them wrong. And if there was one thing humans excelled at, it was proving alien empires wrong, preferably in the most embarrassing way possible. As emergency meetings were called and plans were drawn up, one thing became crystal clear. The Galactians were about to learn why picking a fight with Earth was like poking a hibernating bear while wearing a suit made of honey-covered steaks. This wasn't going to end well for them, but it was definitely going to be entertaining for everyone else. The Global Defense Force headquarters buzzed with activity like an overturned beehive, if the bees wore military uniforms and had access to far too much coffee. In the main conference room, decorated with maps showing Earth's historical battles, mostly featuring humans fighting other humans because, frankly, we'd gotten really good at it, military leaders from around the world gathered to plan humanity's response to the Galactic challenge. Commander Rex Harrison strode into the room, his combat boots making precisely 0 sound on the polished floor, a habit from 20 years of special operations that made junior officers jump when he appeared seemingly out of nowhere. His weather-beaten face bore the kind of expression that suggested he'd seen everything the universe could throw at humanity and found it lacking in creativity. "Ladies and gentlemen," General Chen began, "we need our best for this one. Commander Harrison, would you care to share your thoughts on our purple friends?" Harrison stepped forward, his cybernetic eye whirring as it adjusted focus. The story behind that eye involved 3 terrorists, a rubber duck, and a paperclip, but that was classified at levels even most conspiracy theorists didn't know existed. "The Covaxians," Harrison said, pulling up holographic displays of their previous battles, "fight like they're auditioning for a space opera. All flash, no adaptation. They've won 13 systems because they've never faced anyone who actually evolved fighting each other for fun." The room chuckled. Humans had turned combat into an art form, then a sport, then back into an art form, then somehow into an Olympic event, and finally into something that combined all of the above with a healthy dose of hold my beer and watch this. "Our species," Harrison continued, pacing with the fluid grace of a predator, "invented parkour because regular running was too boring. We created mixed martial arts because using just one fighting style wasn't challenging enough. Hell, we invented hot sauce because regular peppers weren't spicy enough to hurt us properly." The holographic display shifted to show Team Ghost Protocol's records. These weren't your standard special forces. These were the people special forces called when they needed someone crazy enough to try the impossible. Lieutenant Zhang, master of every martial art ever invented and a few she made up herself. Captain Rodriguez, who once won a firefight using nothing but misdirection and interpretive dance. Major O'Neill, whose hobby is studying historical combat techniques and updating them with modern technology. He's the reason we have jet-powered nunchucks. And Lieutenant Commander Jackson, who holds the record for most improvised weapons created from office supplies. The room fell silent as they reviewed the team's credentials. These weren't just soldiers. They were the perfect combination of humanity's greatest traits: adaptability, creativity, and the ability to turn absolutely anything into a weapon. "But sir," a junior officer piped up, "shouldn't we send our most advanced combat units? The Covaxians seem to value technological superiority." Harrison's laugh could have stripped paint. "Son, we're sending exactly what they expect. Their worst nightmare. They think technology wins wars. Wait until they see what humans can do with nothing but ingenuity and spite." The next few days were filled with preparation, though not the kind the Covaxians would have recognized. While their warriors probably practiced ceremonial combat forms and polished their ancient weapons, Team Ghost Protocol was doing something far more terrifying. They were getting creative. Zhang spent hours studying alien anatomy charts, calculating exactly where a human-style roundhouse kick would cause maximum embarrassment. Rodriguez choreographed combat sequences that looked like bad dance moves until the moment they became devastating attacks. O'Neill modified standard equipment in ways that made the engineering department file 3 separate safety complaints and 2 patent applications. Jackson wandered through the base's supply closets with a gleam in his eye that made everyone nervous. In the command center, Harrison watched his team prepare with the satisfied expression of someone who knew exactly how this would end. The Covaxians wanted a demonstration of humanity's combat prowess. They were about to learn why picking a fight with Earth was like challenging a honey badger to a game of nuclear chess. Unnecessarily complex and guaranteed to end badly for someone, probably everyone. The neutral space station Harmony Point hung in space like a cosmic chandelier, all gleaming metal and pulsing energy fields. Team Ghost Protocol's shuttle approached with deliberate casualness, as if they were showing up for a neighborhood barbecue rather than an interspecies combat challenge. Commander Harrison sat in the pilot's seat, idly humming what sounded suspiciously like Eye of the Tiger. The Covaxian welcoming party waited in the main docking bay, their ceremonial armor reflecting the station's lights like a disco ball convention. Their advanced weaponry hummed with barely contained energy, probably compensating for something. The leader of their warriors, champion Zyx'tari, stood front and center, his cybernetically enhanced muscles rippling beneath purple scales that had been polished to a mirror shine. "Welcome, humans," Zyx'tari's voice boomed through the docking bay as Team Ghost Protocol disembarked. "We trust your journey was comfortable." The way he said comfortable made it sound like a dirty word. Harrison stepped forward, wearing standard-issue combat fatigues that looked like they'd been pulled from the bargain bin at Space Walmart. Behind him, his team carried equipment bags that appeared to have been through several wars and at least one rock concert. Oh, you know how it is, Harrison shrugged. Bit of turbulence, mediocre in-flight movie, but the peanuts were fresh. He glanced around the bay, whistling appreciatively. Nice place you got here. Very shiny. You must spend a fortune on cleaning supplies. Zyx'tar's mandibles twitched in what might have been confusion or indigestion. You dare mock the sacred grounds of combat with such casualness? His armor whirred as he stepped forward, servos humming with enough power to level a small building. Sacred grounds? Rodriguez looked around. Oh, you mean the space station. We thought this was the pre-game warm-up area. You know, where everyone gets to know each other before the real fun starts. The Covaxian warriors exchanged glances. This wasn't going according to their carefully scripted intimidation protocol. Allow me to explain the rules, Zyx'tar continued, trying to regain control of the situation. He activated a holographic display showing various combat scenarios. The challenge will consist of 3 trials: strength, skill, and strategy. Your warriors must face our champions in each discipline. Victory requires winning 2 out of 3 trials. Zhang raised her hand like a student in class. Quick question. Are we allowed to improvise, or do we have to stick to the choreography you guys seem so fond of? Choreography? A vein pulsed in Zyx'tar's neck. Our combat forms have been perfected over 10,000 years of warrior tradition. 10,000 years on the same moves? O'Neill looked genuinely concerned. Didn't you get bored? Never thought about mixing it up a little? Maybe throw in a backflip just to keep things interesting? Jackson was barely paying attention, his eyes fixed on the station's maintenance panel, with the kind of interest that usually preceded creative property damage. You dare! Zyx'tar activated his armor's full combat display, holographic readouts projecting his power levels, combat analytics, and what appeared to be his social media status. I am the undefeated champion of the Covaxian Empire. My battle computer can calculate 1 million combat scenarios per second. My neural enhancers can... Does it do taxes? Harrison interrupted. Because if it can handle paperwork, we might actually be impressed. The Covaxian warriors bristled, their advanced weapons humming louder. One of them stepped forward, probably to make another dramatic speech, but slipped on the freshly polished floor. His ceremonial armor's stabilizers kicked in with a sound like a dying vacuum cleaner, sending him spinning in a graceful pirouette before face-planting with a clang that echoed through the station. 10,000 years of combat evolution, Zhang mused, and nobody thought to add non-slip souls? Zyx'tar's face had turned a shade of purple previously unknown to human color theory. The trials begin in 1 hour. Prepare yourselves for humiliation, humans. As the Covaxians stormed off, their dramatic exit somewhat undermined by their careful steps on the slippery floor, Harrison turned to his team. Well, folks, looks like we've successfully completed Phase 1 of psychological warfare, confusion through casual competence. Sir, Jackson called out, still studying the maintenance panel, did you see their power routing? Because I've got some ideas that probably violate at least 3 laws of physics and most of the station's safety protocols. Harrison grinned. The Covaxians had no idea what they'd gotten themselves into. They'd brought technology to a creativity fight, and humanity was about to teach them why that was a terrible mistake. The combat arena aboard Harmony Point looked like someone had taken an ancient Roman Colosseum, chrome-plated everything, and then asked a Vegas showrunner to add tasteful lighting effects. Holographic displays floated around the perimeter, showing close-ups of the preparation areas where both teams readied themselves for combat. The stands filled with alien dignitaries from across the galaxy, all drawn to watch what they assumed would be humanity's humbling defeat. In the Covaxian preparation chamber, their warriors underwent what looked like a cross between a religious ceremony and a software update. Technicians scurried around, checking power levels and running diagnostic scans on their advanced combat suits. Each movement was choreographed, each piece of equipment calibrated to perfection according to 10,000 years of tradition. Meanwhile, in the human preparation area, Team Ghost Protocol was doing what humans did best, improvising in ways that made the safety officers nervous. Zhang sat cross-legged on the floor, apparently meditating, though anyone watching closely might notice she was actually playing air drums to some internal rhythm. Rodriguez had spread out what appeared to be dance notation cards, except they detailed combat moves with names like the Macarena Massacre and Disco Destruction. O'Neill had dismantled half his standard-issue equipment and reassembled it in ways that definitely voided the warranty. Sir, he called to Harrison, holding up what looked like a cross between a toaster and a tactical nuke. Do you think they'll notice if I reverse the polarity of their shield generators using this? Jackson had disappeared into the ceiling ducts 20 minutes ago. Occasionally, sounds of tinkering echoed through the vents, followed by suspicious clicks and the odd satisfied chuckle. The alien observers watched through the transparent barriers, their expressions ranging from amusement to outright disdain. A Zentarian diplomat, still bitter about their own defeat, sneered at the humans' apparent lack of preparation. "Look at them," he commented to his colleague. "No power armor, no neural enhancers, not even a decent energy weapon. The Kovaxians will crush them in minutes." His companion, a veteran of 3 interstellar wars, wasn't so sure. Something about the humans' casualness made his survival instincts twitch. "I don't know," he muttered. "They seem too relaxed." Commander Harrison stood in the center of the chaos, reviewing battle plans that looked suspiciously like they'd been drawn on the back of a pizza box. A Kovaxian official approached, his ceremonial armor clanking with each step. "Your time for preparation nears its end," the official announced grandly. "Are your warriors ready to face their doom with dignity?" Harrison glanced up, his cybernetic eye whirring as it focused on the official. "Oh, we're just about done with our pre-game stretches. By the way, quick question. Your combat suit's power cores, they're rated for electromagnetic pulses, right?" "Of course, our technology is impervious to such primitive attacks." "Good to know." Harrison's grin would have made a shark swim the other way. "Just checking." The official left, clearly unsettled by the exchange. As he returned to his superiors, Jackson dropped from a ceiling vent, covered in dust but wearing the expression of someone who'd just rigged something spectacular. "All set, Commander," he reported, though I should mention that the station's artificial gravity might get a bit creative in sections 3 through 7. Harrison nodded approvingly. "Time check, people. 5 minutes until we show our purple friends why challenging humanity was like giving antimatter to a toddler. Technically impressive, but guaranteed to end in tears." Team Ghost Protocol gathered their gear, or what remained of it after O'Neill's modifications. Zhang stretched lazily like a cat preparing to knock something expensive off a high shelf. Rodriguez did a few practice steps of what might have been a waltz if waltzes usually ended in roundhouse kicks. In the arena above, the announcement system crackled to life. "Warriors, prepare for combat. The trials begin in 3 minutes. Harrison looked at his team, pride evident in his expression. "Remember, folks, they expect a fight. Let's give them an education instead." The first trial began with all the subtlety of a supernova. Zyx'tari's champion, a mountain of muscle and advanced technology named Kralvek, stepped into the arena. His combat suit hummed with enough power to light a small city, holographic displays showing his combat readiness at approximately 300%. Because apparently, regular 100% weren't impressive enough. Zhang stepped forward for humanity, wearing standard workout clothes and what appeared to be well-worn sneakers. The contrast couldn't have been more obvious if she'd shown up in pajamas, which, according to Harrison, had been her first choice. "Begin!" the announcement echoed through the arena. Kralvek activated his suit's combat protocols. Servos whined as he charged forward, his movements a perfect execution of 10,000 years of Kovaxian martial theory. His attack pattern, calculated by quantum computers, was supposedly unstoppable. Zhang sidestepped, letting him charge past like an overdressed bull. "You know," she called out, "there's your first problem. You're letting the suit do all the work." The alien crowd murmured in confusion. This wasn't how combat was supposed to go. Where were the humans' power readings? Why wasn't she activating any combat systems? Kralvek turned, his suit's targeting system locking on. "Your primitive techniques cannot hope to match our advanced combat algorithms." "Advanced algorithms, huh?" Zhang rolled her shoulders. "Let me introduce you to something we call muscle memory instead." What followed was less a fight and more a demonstration of why humans had turned combat into an art form. Zhang moved like water, flowing around Kralvek's attacks with a grace that made his programmed movements look robotic and predictable. She incorporated moves from kung fu, capoeira, and what looked suspiciously like breakdancing. "You see," she explained while casually avoiding a power-assisted roundhouse kick, "humans didn't perfect one style of fighting. We looked at all of them and said, yes, please." In the stands, the alien observers watched in growing disbelief as their combat analysis systems failed to predict Zhang's movements. She wasn't following any recognizable pattern. She was improvising, adapting, combining styles that shouldn't work together but somehow did. The second trial pitted Rodriguez against 3 Covaxian drone warriors. The drones moved in perfect synchronization, their combat routines synchronized down to the microsecond. Rodriguez responded by starting to hum, "Stayin' Alive." "What is this?" demanded the Covaxian combat instructor. "This is not proper combat form." "This," Rodriguez grinned, dodging between the drones while maintaining a perfect beat. "This is what happens when humans turn fighting into dancing, then back into fighting, then back into dancing again." The drone's targeting systems struggled to track his movements as he flowed through what appeared to be a combination of capoeira, salsa, and several movements that defied classification. Each attack flowed into a defensive move that became another attack, all while maintaining what was now recognizable as a disco rhythm. For the third trial, O'Neill faced off against the Covaxians' most advanced combat robot. The machine stood 3 meters tall, armed with every weapon in the Covaxian arsenal. Its artificial intelligence could process combat scenarios faster than light. O'Neill brought a stick. Well, technically it was a quarterstaff, but he'd modified it in ways that made the engineering team file their 3rd resignation letter of the day. "Your primitive weapon cannot harm our ultimate combat machine," the Covaxian weapons master declared. "Primitive?" O'Neill looked offended. "I'll have you know I spent at least 10 minutes upgrading this thing. Watch." The combat robot charged, weapons powering up, and suddenly found itself dealing with a quarterstaff that somehow redirected its own energy weapons back at it. O'Neill had apparently turned the ancient art of staff fighting into something that violated several laws of physics. Meanwhile, Jackson had been busy too. Throughout the arena, small devices he'd planted during his maintenance inspection began to activate. Gravity went sideways in precise locations. Power fluctuations caused the Covaxians' combat suits to play what sounded suspiciously like "Never Gonna Give You Up" through their external speakers. "Impossible!" Zyx'tari roared from the command platform. "Our technology is superior. Our combat forms are perfect." "That's your problem right there," Harrison commented from his observation post. "You tried to perfect combat. Humans, we perfected adaptation instead." The realization finally dawned on the Covaxian leadership as they watched their champions fall one by one to what appeared to be a combination of martial arts, dance moves, physics violations, and what one observer swore was a modified version of the electric slide. They hadn't just challenged humans to a fight, they'd challenged humans to get creative. And if there was one thing humans excelled at, it was turning combat into performance art with a body count. The moment everything changed wasn't marked by an explosion or a dramatic declaration. Instead, it began with laughter, human laughter echoing through the combat arena as Team Ghost Protocol systematically dismantled everything the Covaxians believed about warfare. Commander Harrison watched from his position as his team executed what they dubbed Operation Make Them Question Everything. Zhang had switched from traditional martial arts to what appeared to be interpretive dance moves that somehow kept working better than they should. Each time the Covaxian combat computers attempted to analyze and counter her movements, she'd switch styles entirely, flowing between disciplines that had no business working together. "Interesting thing about human combat," Harrison announced casually over the arena's communication system, his voice carrying to every confused alien observer. "We never could decide on one best way to fight, so we just kept all of them." In another section of the arena, Rodriguez had turned his battle into what looked like a flash mob with casualties. 3 more Covaxian warriors had joined the fight, their combat suits humming with power, and found themselves caught in what could only be described as a combat conga line. The warriors' sophisticated neural networks were struggling to process how someone could turn "stayin' alive" into a legitimate combat technique. "You see," Rodriguez explained while executing a perfect moonwalk away from a plasma burst, "humans figured out pretty early that the best way to win a fight is to make sure your opponent has no idea what you're going to do next. Sometimes that means capoeira, sometimes that means channeling Michael Jackson." The Covaxian command center was in chaos. Their combat analysts watched in horror as their carefully constructed battle algorithms crashed, unable to process the sheer unpredictability of human fighting styles. O'Neill's modified quarterstaff had somehow hacked into their combat suits' power systems, forcing them to run diagnostic checks in the middle of combat moves. High Commander Zyx'tar's mandibles clicked rapidly as he watched his elite warriors fall into disarray. This is impossible. Where are their combat protocols, their battle formations, their what? Harrison interrupted, his cybernetic eye gleaming. Their predictability? Yeah, we threw that out around the same time we decided that using a chair as an improvised weapon was a perfectly reasonable tactical decision. The final straw came when Jackson's modifications to the station's systems finally kicked in fully. The artificial gravity in the Covaxian section began operating on what could only be described as interpretive physics. Their warriors found themselves trying to fight while dealing with gravity that changed direction based on what appeared to be random quotes from Earth's military history. As a wise human once said, Jackson's voice echoed through the now chaotic arena, "Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee," though I might have taken the float part a bit too literally. The Covaxian combat formation, perfected over millennia of warfare, completely fell apart. Their warriors, trained to fight in perfect synchronization, found themselves facing opponents who treated combat like a creative writing exercise with violence. Every predicted outcome, every calculated response, every programmed counterattack proved useless against humans who apparently treated their entire combat manual as more of a suggestion than a rulebook. In the observation deck, a Centaurian diplomat turned to his colleague and whispered, "We may need to reconsider our assessment of human combat capabilities." His colleague, watching as Zhang combined Tai Chi with what appeared to be the Macarena to devastating effect, could only nod in stunned agreement. The final confrontation began when Zyx'tari himself entered the arena, his advanced combat suit bristling with enough weaponry to outfit a small army. The Covaxian champion had finally decided to take matters into his own hands, which was exactly what Team Ghost Protocol had been waiting for. "You have mocked our traditions," Zyx'tari's voice boomed across the arena. "You have disturbed our perfect combat formations with your chaos. This ends now." Commander Harrison stepped forward, cracking his knuckles with a sound that somehow carried more menace than all of Zyx'tari's weapon systems combined. "You know what your real problem is? You thought war was a science. We humans, we turned it into an art form." Team Ghost Protocol moved as one, each member flowing into position with the kind of coordination that came not from combat computers, but from understanding exactly how their teammates thought. Zhang and Rodriguez flanked left and right, their movements a synchronized chaos that defied prediction. O'Neill readied his modified quarterstaff, which now hummed with energy borrowed from 3 different Covaxian power sources. Jackson's fingers danced across a stolen maintenance pad, turning the arena's systems into his personal playground. Zyx'tari's combat suit engaged its ultimate battle mode, holographic displays showcasing its power levels climbing off the charts. The alien audience leaned forward, expecting to finally see human irreverence crushed beneath superior technology. Instead, they watched as 4 humans demonstrated why challenging Earth to combat was like playing chess with someone who'd not only rewritten the rules, but had also weaponized the board itself. Harrison gave a single hand signal, and chaos erupted. Zhang's martial arts flowed into Rodriguez's combat dancing, creating a whirlwind of motion that Zyx'tari's targeting systems couldn't track. O'Neill's staff struck key points on the champion's armor, each hit sending cascading power failures through systems that had never been designed to handle what he'd done to physics. Jackson's modifications turned the arena's gravity into modern art, leaving Zyx'tari fighting in conditions that changed faster than his suit could compensate. The final moment came when Harrison stepped through the chaos his team had created, reached up and simply pulled a single wire that Jackson had identified during his earlier maintenance inspection. Zyx'tari's ultimate combat suit, the pinnacle of alien military technology, froze mid-motion and began playing the chicken dance through all available speakers. "We accept your surrender," Harrison announced to the stunned silence, his cybernetic eye twinkling with amusement. "And might I suggest updating your combat manuals to include a chapter on human creativity? It'll save everyone a lot of time in the future." The galactic political landscape changed faster than a quantum particle after Team Ghost Protocol's victory. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session, which mostly consisted of various species trying to pretend they hadn't just watched their entire understanding of combat superiority get rewritten by humans using dance moves and improvised weapons. The Covaxian Empire's diplomatic corps worked overtime trying to spin their defeat into something that sounded less like, "We got our advanced technological backsides handed to us by humans," using what appeared to be interpretive dance and modified office supplies. Their official statement declared they had gained valuable insights into alternative combat methodologies, which was diplomat speak for, "Please don't let them do that to us again." Commander Harrison and his team received invitations from 17 different alien military academies to give lectures on human combat techniques. They politely declined most of them, though Harrison did agree to one presentation titled, "Why Challenging Humans to Combat is Like Playing Strip Poker with a Telepath. You're already losing, you just don't know it yet." The Zyx'tari War College added a mandatory course called Human Unpredictability, Why Everything You Know About Combat is Probably Wrong. The first lesson consisted entirely of footage from the battle, with special emphasis on the moment Rodriguez defeated 3 elite warriors using what he later revealed was a combination of the electric slide and Krav Maga. Earth's diplomatic status received an immediate upgrade from primitive but interesting to "do not antagonize under any circumstances." The official classification included a footnote that read, "especially if they start humming while fighting." As for the Harmony Point space station, maintenance crews spent weeks trying to restore normal gravity patterns in sections 3 through 7. They eventually gave up and declared those areas interpretive gravity zones, which surprisingly became a popular tourist attraction. The final peace treaty included several unique clauses, including one that specifically prohibited humans from weaponizing Earth entertainment forms in future conflicts. Rodriguez argued this was impossible to enforce, pointing out that humans had been turning everyday activities into combat forms since someone first decided a kitchen rolling pin could double as a defensive weapon. Standing on the observation deck of their departing ship, Commander Harrison watched the Covaxian diplomatic vessel prepare for departure. His cybernetic eye zoomed in on their new hull marking, a warning symbol showing a human dancer with the universal "proceed with extreme caution" indicators. "You know," he mused to his team, "I think we just taught the galaxy why Earth's historical strategy of 'hold my beer and watch this' has kept us undefeated for so long." Zhang nodded sagely. "Nothing quite says 'don't mess with humans' like defeating an advanced alien empire with a combination of mixed martial arts and the Macarena." As their ship set course for Earth, the galactic news networks were already running special features titled "Humans," why their combat style is basically yes and with violence. The universe had learned an important lesson about challenging Earth to combat, and somewhere in the vast expanse of space, a new alien civilization was probably about to make the same mistake. But that was a problem for another day, and possibly another dance routine.